It's time for the Margin Matters Minute with Money Man Jason Brown.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Margin Matters Minute. My name is Jason Brown, and today we have a very special guest of mine who is sharing her debt-free story, completely 100% debt-free. And I want to welcome my longtime dear friend, Collins Foster, who has alerted me recently that her and her husband, Chris, just paid off their house. So they aggressively paid down their mortgage to become 100% debt free. So of course, as you might imagine, I begged her to come onto my YouTube channel and please share your story with everybody. So in hopes that we could learn something from your journeys through becoming debt free. So Collins, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today your story.
No problem. Happy to be here. And happy to be debt free.
Yeah, and of course, perfect transition. Let's go right into my first question. Is the most glaringly obvious is, so now that you're debt free, how has your life changed and how does it feel?
Okay, so it hasn't changed at all.
Okay.
It feels very much a relief.
Right.
It feels very freeing. But I think in the true spirit of how we came to be debt free, it really hasn't changed. It's not like, we've all of a sudden said, okay, we don't have a house payment. We'll go blow that, house payment every month on other things. We still have the same budget that we started 2021 with, and the same little pot of fun money that we give ourselves each month to kind of like an adult allowance, if you will.
Right.
But it really hasn't changed. I mean, it feels good, and there's a sense of relief and, pride in that we've like set this aggressive goal and we're able to accomplish it. But it really hasn't changed much.
Well, let's put it into a little bit of context. So when did you actually become debt free? It was recently, right?
Right. In January,
Okay.
the end of January. Yeah.
2021 of this year,
Yes.
2021. So it's been a couple months. So maybe that's a better question for me to ask you maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, as opposed to right now, because it just happened. It's still fresh,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So like you said, it's more of a relief factor, which is great. So let's get into a little bit of background of your financial journey that led you to becoming debt free.
Okay.
So I love asking this question to everybody I interview is, so what is your background of money? What were you taught as a child? What did you maybe learn or not learn from your parents growing up? Just kind of share a little bit about your background and history of just money management.
Right. Okay. So I'll start with my family. There weren't a whole lot of conversations about finances or I think that's pretty typical of previous generations. The further you go back, the more taboo it was to talk about your money or your finances. And so there wasn't a lot of conversations. I remember my parents, they work very hard. I know my mom kind of was the financial manager, or still is, in their house. And she's the one who tracks everything. But there wasn't this like sitting down and explaining of, this is good debt, this is bad debt, this is, this is why you want to stay away from credit card, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris, my husband, his big takeaway, he couldn't be here today, but we did talk through some of these questions. His big takeaway growing up was pay off your credit card every month.
Right.
So there might be reasons why you would want to use a credit card. Like we get Costco, rewards or whatnot. So we charge everything on the Costco card, but just with the intention of it, the balance is paid every single month. So blending those two together, and I will say Chris was definitely the financially literate one of the two of us. So, we went to college together. he was over here, got a full-time job, or not full-time, part-time job our freshman year in college. And I was over there blowing the money that my grandparents gave me. My grandparents on my father's side gave us all money that they had been saving along since we were born, gave it to all the grandchildren when we, turned 18, went off to college. And, it was like having this big lump sum of money. It was $8,000. So
Okay.
to fit in context. And,
Yeah.
there was no restrictions on that, or
Oh, okay.
like, here's the money. And went down there with that $8,000, came home at the end of my freshman year with about 80 of that,
Wow.
8,000.
Okay.
And I remember sometime around the end of college, got a speeding ticket on I-16 coming home one weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fine was like $80. So I think I managed to zero out.
Oh my gosh.
$8,000. And I mean, I think have thought over the last 25 years so many times what I would do differently with that money had I known then what I know now.
Well, let me ask you real quick. Well, I'm assuming they gave you that money to pay for college. How did you pay for college? Since you did not use that, or did you use some of it for your college?
Excuse me. Yeah. So I had the Hope Scholarship.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good.
So I had the Hope Scholarship. I had the Pell Grant.
Oh, good.
I also was a work study student in the counseling center at Georgia Southern for my whole time there. So, so that really, thinking back on it, I lived in a dorm, so that was all part of my, room and board that year. And so that was like fun money. That's how I used it, was fun money.
For incidentals, as I would say.
Right.
I got you. Well, that's great that you had your college paid for with those scholarships and grants.
Yeah.
That's
and I did. So let's see. When I graduated, I forgot exactly how much Chris had. He maybe had like somewhere around 10 to 15,000 in student loans. I think I had 17.
Okay.
And that was, our college student loans are one of the very first things we paid off, in our marriage as our kind of like debt reduction plan. So
good for you. Good for you. Anyway. Excellent. Well, your perfect segue into my next question, because you actually just mentioned it, was when you said something about good debt versus bad debt, right? I think that one of your family members might have been teaching you a little bit about that. So my next question is, what is your view on debt? And is there a such thing as good debt versus bad debt? What are your thoughts on, since now you're debt free, maybe your view of debt has maybe changed. So share about that.
Yeah, so definitely we feel like, and I don't know that every financial guru out there would say or would agree with this, but I mean we definitely feel like there is good debt and bad debt. And the way Chris would say it if he were here is, good debt is debt that has an appreciating value to it, like a home, something that's an investment, like student loans. It's an investment to, a more job opportunity or a higher paying job or whatnot. So there is good debt. And, just really being conscious though of that good debt and how that aligns with your debt to income ratio. And so that's, kind of always what we've tried to be mindful of. And sometimes that's hard, and you can kind of get swept up into what someone might want you to believe for you and your financial picture is good debt. Predatory lending, all those different things that definitely play into how people get in over their heads.
Right.
So yeah. Very
true. Very good points. So now let's kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of your story here. Just basically, tell us your debt-free story. And I think specifically, I think you and Chris worked really hard at aggressively paying down your mortgage early. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us that whole story. Well, A, why did you want to do that? And then B, share the specifics, like, what kind of mortgage did you have? Was it a 15-year or 30-year? Kind of share some of those metrics with us.
Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do, because when you say the story, it really starts with our first home.
Okay.
And so I'll kind of
Yeah.
quickly
Perfect.
go through.
Great.
So we got married in 2003. And right before we got married, we bought our first home. It was a condo, 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom condo over off Howell Mill Road. And so, that was kind of like the beginning of our journey. It was the beginning of our home ownership together, beginning of our marriage. And we came into the marriage, like, I guess when we were planning our wedding, we set up a little savings account and we were both putting money into it to help with
Okay.
wedding stuff or just whatever, starting our life together. And so within our first year of marriage, and Chris being, like I said, the financially literate one of the two of us, he had already started wanting us to create a budget. So we had been tracking our spending for 6 months or so, and then he had built this elaborate spreadsheet budget. And we were sitting on the porch one night on our little balcony, and I remember him saying something like, "I'm so glad that we haven't accrued any more debt since we got married." And I just got very silent, and I think I might have started crying a little bit. And he said, "Just tell me how much."
Oh no.
And so I guess I'll pause that and say, this was not money, this was not credit card debt that had
Right.
accrued, in that first year of marriage. This was credit card debt that started for me when I was in college and, paying for everything after I'd blown through the 8,000,
Right.
got my first credit card literally it's on spring break in Panama City
Mhm.
I opened the credit card to get the free t-shirt.
Oh yeah.
And I was pretty good about paying it off every month. But just along the way, it caught up with me. And um so we came into the marriage with, I had this credit card that was mine over here.
Mhm.
And I also, at that point in my life, I, had this kind of, I want to be an independent woman kind of thing. Like, I want my own money and, you have your money. And so we were kind of split, kind of like acting as like financially as roommates, like splitting, we'd
Okay.
split the mortgage. The
Right.
interesting thing is I didn't have the sense to realize, well, for me, 50% of our mortgage payment was a lot more of my monthly income than Chris's, because he made more
Right.
than I did.
Right. When you look at the percentages, right?
Right. And then so there were all these like trade-offs. Like anytime we would go out to eat, he would pay. So like that was money that was never coming out of my account. But when Christmas came around, I was the one who did all the Christmas gifts.
Oh,
So anyway, it was all kinds of skewed.
right. I see
And
what you're saying.
so anyway, back to the patio, and he says how much, and I'm like, I thought it was around 8,000. But
Okay.
let me tell you, Jason, I had laid awake many a night thinking, like, how am I going to pay this off? So
Mhm.
that whole, our first, and it didn't cause any friction in our marriage because I was like silently trying to like take care of this, so whatever.
Right.
So anyway, we sat down the next day. We took like 24 hours and we sat down and we really looked at everything. And I think that's one lesson that we would share in our story or whatever, is that, putting your head in the sand and not really like having the exact down to the penny what you owe, um, that is no way to get out of it.
That's right.
So when it all was said and done, it was about $10,000 that
Okay.
I owed on these credit cards. So we came up with, and for those of you who see this and have known me, you've heard about the budget smackdown before.
Oh, okay. I like that. I
And
like that term.
so what happened was we sat down and he had made this spreadsheet with all these formulas, and it was, and so we tracked every little penny. But one of the categories in our spreadsheet was fund money.
Okay.
So like our allowance that I mentioned earlier. And
Mhm.
so um we each had an amount of fund money, and he gave us, we put it in there, and we both had the same amount. But I just wanted this off my conscience and off
Mhm.
my, off my mind space so much that I gave myself $40 a month in allowance. And that covered things like going out to eat with girlfriends or, getting a pedicure, whatever I wanted, clothes, whatever I wanted to do. But it had to be less than $40.
Oh, wow.
That enabled me to make payments on that $10,000. So I like bigger payments a month.
Right. Right.
And so I ended up paying off that debt in 18 months.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
and the way the term budget smackdown came to be is that I, like friends of mine, neighbors would say, "Hey, you want to go grab a drink or whatever?" And I'm like, "I can't. I'm on the budget smackdown, and I only have $10 for the rest of the month." And what was so interesting is the more I started talking about me being on the budget smackdown, it's almost like it gave permission to the people around me to admit how much they had
Oh, okay.
on credit cards.
Oh,
It
wow.
also was very eye-opening that you can have a lot of fun on a little bit of money. And I know, like,
Yeah.
following a lot of, your posts and blogs and whatnot, I know you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Some people call that being frugal. There's a lot of other derogatory terms that I won't mention here, but I like to call it being resourceful, right?
yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
term for it.
Well, I like to call it being on your way to debt free.
Yeah. Yeah. Some
um,
people might call you a cheapskate or, whatever, being cheap but yeah, I mean, I'm just, I was the guy that would go to the restaurant and sit down and not eat, not pay for anything. Like I would get a glass of water and
yeah.
just sit there and hang out with my friends and eat crackers, right? Because it wasn't really about the, spending $50 for one meal. It was just about seeing my friends and hanging out with
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
no one even realized that I was doing it because you're in a group of a bunch of people. And, I stop in and see, and you probably did the same things, it sounds like. So, yeah, I mean, you learn, right? You learn how to
Yeah.
be very resourceful, right?
Yeah. Well, that reminds me, one time Chris and I were out to dinner in college, and he was ordering, I think, like a personal pizza or something. And he asked the server, how much is an extra topping? And they said, I think 25 cents. And Chris said, never mind. I was like,
That was too
you know,
much.
but so anyway, so we paid that down in 18 months. And so, I mean, so within 3 years of our marriage, we had and still have remained having no credit card debt from month to month. And so, and the other thing, as I've talked to people about this, because, I mean, the more I talked about the budget smackdown, the more, people would ask. I mean, Chris ended up making a blank copy of the spreadsheet because so many people ask us for it.
Oh, that's
So
great.
I would just send, like, I had it saved blank budget smackdown, and I would send it out when people would ask for it. Now we use mint.com
Yes.
instead of that elaborate spreadsheet. But I think, one thing I've shared many times with people over the years as I've talked about the budget smackdown is the relief for me. I won't speak for Chris, but the relief for me in that time period was not the day that I made the last payment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that felt good.
Right.
But the relief and peace of mind, and when I wasn't like waking up in the middle of the night worrying about this, came the second we had the plan in place.
Oh, okay. That's
So,
really good. That's a really good point. And you might agree with this. Is when you said that I made me think it's all about control, right? So you always hear people say either you're going to control your money or your money is going to control you. And if you don't have a budget, your money will control you. And that's all a budget is, right? A budget is allowing you to control your money, right? Is that
right.
That's kind of, I think, what you're going to say.
Right. And so, I mentioned earlier, having my head in the sand, not even knowing. I mean, I was off by about $2,000 in how much my total combined credit card debt was. So going from head in the sand to in control and knowing the exact month of the payoff date, that that in and of itself provided the relief I needed.
Yeah, so that gave you a goal, and that actually put it into reality, I guess. Is you having that budget or that spreadsheet actually gave you something to look forward to. You had an end date, I'm sure, like, hey, I'm going to have this paid off by this date, and now it's reality, right? Now it's really going to happen, right?
Right.
And because you've set it in stone, if you will. So that's a really good point about how that changes your mindset by doing that.
Yeah, it does. So I guess to continue on with I guess part B of your question.
Yeah.
So we lived in that teeny tiny little condo for I think about 5 years, 5 or 6 years. Then and during that time, Chris and a couple of his friends invested in a rental property. So we had a rental house that we shared. They rehabbed it themselves. They had, I think, at least Chris, I don't know about the other ones, had read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right.
So it was like, oh, buy some rental property, whatever. And so I don't know that ever ended up being the financial engine that we envisioned it being.
Right.
But definitely a lot of lessons learned in that, and there was value in it for us. But so in thinking of expanding our family, we were looking for a bigger house, and so we ended up building a house in over in East Atlanta. And I remember we went out to Target one day to pick up a few things, and we went to the Target in Edgewood near where some of our friends had just moved. And we ended up going through this open home in a new neighborhood, like the model home, and of course fell in love with it. And I remember we came home that night and Chris was sitting at his desk in our condo, like running the numbers through the budget spreadsheet or SmackDown spreadsheet. And I remember him saying, I think we can do this, and so we got all swept up in that. And we did it. We built a house. We lived there for 6 years. That's where our daughter was born. And, we brought her home. And unfortunately, right when we were planning so Emerson was born in 2009. So 2008 happened, and the economic, housing crash of 2008-9.
The Great Recession, I think they call it.
Right. And so we lost a lot of, that was an example of what we felt like was good debt turned into bad debt for us because of the value of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought our home where we currently live, still had the house in East Atlanta, but we rented it out for 2 years and then sold when we were able to, I should say, not lose as much as we would have if we had sold right when we moved out. And so when we came here, we had to get to some of your earlier questions. We had a 30-year loan.
Okay.
And we paid it off in 9 years and 2 months.
Wow. Okay.
So, and we did, and I will say, I feel Chris really should, in a lot of ways, it's a joint effort, right? We're a team, but he is definitely much more the financial visionary in terms of, how and when we should do things. And of course, everything we talk about, and it's most of the time it's me saying, that's a really great idea. Like, thank you for, but anyway, his goal all along when we bought this house was to pay it off in 10 years.
Okay.
So he had the calculation of the payments of how much we've always paid extra on our mortgage, no matter what house we were in. So he had it, the calculations, and then if he were to, again, with the living within your means and not really changing things when, so he'd get a bonus and he would put that bonus towards the principal on the house. And, so yeah, it was a really good feeling to go to the bank and have that wire transfer for the last payment in January. Wow. I felt bad too because he was on a really important call and he couldn't get to the bank to do it in time. So I was actually the one to go in there and do it. And,
so you stole his thunder a little bit.
So anyway.
So a couple questions. When you say you had a 30-year mortgage, you paid it off in just a little over 9 years, but Chris's goal was to pay it off in 10. So why not get a 10-year mortgage? What, did you guys look at that or
Mm,
consider that at the time? Or
mm. I don't know the answer to that.
yeah, I was curious.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
the
don't.
interest rates were higher. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we closed on this house and it was 11, 11, 11.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
so I mean,
Can't forget that.
so that actually that might answer the question there, because in 2011, I mean,
Yeah.
interest rates were really good because they were still trying to like stimulate the housing market a little bit. And fortunately for us, the deal, so to speak, we got on this house
Mhm.
really kind of offset the deal that the person who bought our house in East Atlanta got.
Okay.
And so we got a really good deal on our house, and our home value has increased. um in the, let's see, well, this November it'll be 10 years that we've been here.
Okay.
And our home value has gone up, you know
Okay.
almost double.
Wow, that's great. So, okay, so yeah, back in 2011, I don't think the interest rates were anywhere close to as low as they are now. So that, that could have been a reason why. But okay, so this might be more of a Chris question, but maybe you can answer it. But why was it so important for you to pay off the mortgage that fast? Like, why did you guys want to be that aggressive with paying it down?
Right. So we did talk about this, and there's really two parts to this, to the answer. So the first one was, Chris, especially having a child. I mean, Chris has always been very conscientious of just making sure that our family, has physical stability, like being able to stay in this home if we want to be in this home, financial stability, that sort of thing. And so, just knowing that if anything were to happen to him, just he's always said, when we've done some of our kind of estate planning or just discussions about,
Right.
you know, uh, what would happen if kind of thing, he's always been very adamant about, I just want, if something were to happen to me, I want you and Emerson to be able to maintain the life that we have
Right.
and not be interrupted.
Gotcha.
So a little backstory on that. Chris grew up, moved several times, when he, between K through 12, moved several times. And I never moved. I mean, my parents still live in the same house they lived
Oh,
in
wow.
before I was born. And so the combination of those two experiences, we both were very adamant about wanting to give Emerson a consistent childhood, a consistent, same neighbors, same friends.
Stability.
Yeah. And fortunately, this school system, this area, this, environment that we have has worked well. She's been able to thrive in. If she were struggling, and we would move to make sure our family's needs were met, but
Mhm.
we're good.
That's great.
Um, so that's part one of the question, or the
Okay.
answer.
Okay.
Part two is just being able to tie up a bow on all of that, and then take a breather, and then to be able to, go have the flexibility to go and do some different things,
Mhm.
like a little bit more, I guess you would say, a little bit more good debt.
Yeah.
We've kind of been talking for the last few years about investing in a lake property,
Right.
that we would use as a rental property, and
Sure.
as an income generator
Sure.
in that regard. Um so yeah, but just have we would never have done that, the lake property. We wouldn't have done some of these other things, trying these other things out, investments out, if while we still had our primary mortgage.
Right. Right.
So
Gotcha.
yeah.
That's well, I want to that's astonishing. So I just want to say you paid off a 30-year mortgage in a little over 9 years. That is really, really admirable. And please tell Chris, congratulations from me. That is just a tremendous story of being very aggressive with paying down that debt. So that is I really appreciate you sharing that story. All right, Colin. So now that you're completely debt free, and we talked about the house and the mortgage, paying that off, I'm actually curious about your thoughts on cars. So I'm assuming your cars are paid off. And what's happening to Americans today is Americans are going bankrupt from buying cars, right? They're
Right.
signing 7-year car notes. The average cost of a car now in America is somewhere in the range of like $35,000. So it's completely insane to me what people are doing to themselves by going out and buying new cars. Sometimes every 2 to 3 to 4 years, people are going out getting new cars, which I don't really understand it. But what are your thoughts on all that? What's your car situation?
So correct. Our cars are paid off. Part of the original budget smackdown, and we still do it. I mean, the like I said, it's still there. It's just in mint. But the category, so we all know, especially living in a city like Atlanta, where you can't, well, some parts of Atlanta where you can't just walk to everything you need to get to, right? So for the most part, for us, we both needed transportation. We both needed cars. So so what we did was, each month we allocated a certain amount of money toward the car payment. Okay, so when we paid off our cars, we continued allocating that car payment. It just never
Oh, I
went
see.
to the car dealership, or
Yeah.
whoever held the loan.
Okay.
I'll say this, I'm about to be 43. I've only owned 3 cars in my life.
Oh, wow.
My first car I purchased right out of college, and it
Okay.
was a brand new car, but I had no savings. And so I really wanted a good, reliable car that I knew that I was going to be able to drive for a long time. So I bought a 4-door, thinking, okay, I might have a kid by the time I'm done driving this car. So I need to have a 4-door car. So I bought a brand new Honda Accord, and but I also had a full-time job, and I knew what the car payments were, and I made the car, whatever. So I paid off that car in 5 years. I can't remember. It's been so long ago. But the main point is I drove it 7 years beyond paying it off.
Oh, that's great.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
brand new car, and yes, I know that new cars depreciate as soon as you drive them off the lot,
Right.
and I know that. But new car, so yeah, so I paid it off for 5 years. In 5 years, drove it for 7 more years. So I had that car a total of 12 years, but that whole 7 years, I wasn't spending that car payment on, frivolous things. We were just pushing it over into the next pot of money for
Okay.
the next car.
Oh, that's smart. Okay.
And I think that's, what sometimes people, um, it's hard to allocate that much money, a couple $100 a month or whatever, to something that you're not going to spend or need for, way down the road. But if the idea is to be able to pay cash for everything,
Mhm.
that's how you build it up. So we've always made a car payment, but
Mhm.
we make it to ourselves,
I
to
see.
savings, and then we buy the car outright.
I believe that's called delayed gratification, which is something that many Americans struggle with. But that's actually a really good point, because you just kept that line item in Chris's budget in his spreadsheets that he's working on. So you just kept that, whatever that car payment was, you kept it in there. And like
Hmm.
you said, you just paid it once the car was paid off. You just started paying it to yourself. Like, maybe you
Right.
just shifted to a savings account or something like that. And then you,
Exactly.
you can allocate, okay, this savings account is for our next car. So we're just
Yeah.
going to keep putting this car payment into this savings account, and you're going to drive this Honda Accord as long as you can drive it. The longer you drive it, the more time you have to build that future car fund up, right? So
Right.
that's a really fantastic way to do that, and hopefully that gives other people ideas of how they can also do it. Because
Right.
I think our society and culture the way that they handle the cars is once the car's paid for, then that's the day that they go out and look for a new car, right? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I got whatever it is, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever your car note is. Okay, I paid off my car's paid for. Now I'm going to go out and buy a new car. And they'll trade in the other car and get some money for that toward the new car. And then they just start the clock over again where they're paying new car payments for the new car, as opposed to you, where you're paying the car payments to yourself. So that's a really a good way to do it. So
Right. And when I'm paying it to myself, it's interest gaining, right?
that's right, absolutely.
And so that 5 years, that was paying on it with interest and whatnot. So and for me, I mean, Chris is more of a car person. Like
Okay.
he's switched around his cars a little bit more. I mean, of course, always selling one and paying cash for the, that sort of thing. I'm just not into, I mean, I really wanted a Honda Accord for whatever reason for my first car,
Mhm.
right out of college. When I drove it to over 200, I think it was like 250,000 miles.
Wow.
Sold it to some kid for a couple $1,000.
Okay.
Got another used Honda Accord. And then it was, so we have this kind of rotation. It's when it's Chris's turn to get a new car, and then it'll be my turn, that sort of thing.
Right.
When it was my turn to get another new car, with a family, we needed a larger vehicle for vacations and whatnot. So I really wanted a Toyota 4Runner.
Mhm.
So I got that. But my kind of mindset on cars is, I mean, I got this car. It's the one I wanted. I'm going to drive it until it has to be towed off the side of the road. Like it just won't go anymore.
Yeah.
My car now will be the one that Emerson purchases from me.
Okay.
If she can afford it when she turns 16.
Okay. Well, that's great. You've already got it earmarked for her. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But she has to buy it from me. She has to buy it from me.
Right. She has to save up her money and
Right.
buy it from you. And that way she'll take ownership and pride in
Exactly.
that's a really good plan too. So thank you so much for sharing all of your debt-free stories so far. Now, the last question is probably the most important question to me and the most intriguing question to me. And I love asking this question to everybody who becomes debt-free one way or the other. And the question is, now that you are completely debt-free, how do you stay debt-free, right? So it's easy to become, it's not easy, right? It's not discounting your journey, but it's easier to become debt-free than to stay debt-free, because our media and society, they glorify all these debt-free stories, but then what you don't hear about is like, I paid off my house in 9 years. Like you, okay, you killed yourself for 9 years. You worked hard, you sacrificed, you did the budget smacked down, but that was just a finite amount of time, right? That was 9 years. Now you have the entire rest of your life to stay debt free. And I compare this actually to fitness, right? Like going to the gym and losing weight.
Oh yeah.
So this is very comparable, right? So let's say you want to lose 30 pounds, right? Okay, well, my goal is to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to hire a trainer. I'm going to go get my gym membership, and you maybe hire a nutritionist, whatever you need to do. And you work hard for a year and you get the weight off, right? End of the year, I hit my goal, lost my weight. I'm feeling good. But now the harder thing is to actually maintain that weight, right? So to me, it's kind of, they're very comparable. It's actually harder to maintain the weight. And I think it's harder to stay, now that you're debt-free, to stay debt-free. So what kind of tips or advice can you share with us that you can continue to stay debt-free?
Well, I guess maybe we should also have like a 1-year follow-up to
Yeah, we can do that. I would love to do that. Yeah, it'd be great. Where are they now?
Right. Are they still debt-free? Well, well, to your point earlier, I mean, it has been very recent, right? So we haven't had a lot of time to go out and get back into debt.
Right.
So one thing I will say is that habits, when you build habits, they're almost like reflexive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have been, I mean, this March 29th, we will have been married 18 years.
Okay.
So, and the budget smackdown happened in our first year of marriage, right? So for 17 years, we have been acting in this way or behaving, managing our money, controlling our money this way. And so I think I would hope that 17 years of being one way and seeing how well that has served us, it wouldn't, our habits wouldn't just go away. So the other thing too is, you know, so I mentioned the whole lake house situation and using that as a kind of like a business, if you will. I mean, obviously we would, enjoy it as a family, but still even like a business venture going into debt. I mean, when I started my practice, my social work practice in fall of 2019, it was with the whole budget smackdown in mind. It was a zero-based budget. It was, I work from my home. I don't need an office. I don't need the overhead, that sort of thing. And so, so from a vacation rental property standpoint, I mean, there will be some good debt for a while until the revenue is paying down that debt.
Right.
But I will tell you, I mean, the housing market at the lake right now is crazy.
Yeah,
it is absolutely crazy. This pandemic has made, it's made people crazy in a lot of ways. And one of them was, toilet paper. One of them was like, let's go pay 3 times what this lake house was valued at, 2 years ago. Sure, we'll pay 3 times that much just because we want to get out of our primary house. So what was kind of interesting is it really was a test of us, for me and Chris, because, just because in our planning and when we had kind of scheduled for ourselves that we would be ready, like pay off this house and we would be ready to, look at or be more serious about the lake house investment. Just because we're ready doesn't mean the market is ready for us.
Right.
The market right now is really ready for someone who can and is willing to pay 3 times. But we're just not that. That's just not, it's not right for us. It's not, we cannot in good conscience overpay like that. So I think that's been a big test. And I think it's a testament to maybe how much that habit forming 17 years, played into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to wrap it up by just saying thank you and congratulations to you both, Collins and Chris Foster. Are completely 100% debt free. Congratulations. What a tremendous journey you've been on, and what a story. And just thank you so much for sharing. And I really hope that the viewers can learn something from your story and maybe implement some of your tips or ideas into their financial lifestyles as well. So so any final thoughts or anything you want to say before we
Well, first I want to say I have enjoyed, because financial literacy and the budget smackdown has been such a passion of mine, because I've seen how it transformed our lives and our marriage, in the sense that it really, if you look at the research that shows the catalyst, or the not catalyst, but the cause of most marital strife, finances are one of them, right? There is one of the top reasons why married couples struggle. And now I am not saying in 17 years or 18 years that Chris and I have not, had a differing opinion on a purchase or, an amount or whatever. But it really just hasn't been an issue because we took control of it so early on.
Right.
So anyway, with financial literacy being such a personal passion of mine, I've really enjoyed watching, you over the last few years take this topic and put it out there and doing good things with it. I love seeing your posts about what you're teaching your son. But, I guess one final thought, and I think this is something that, Chris and I have talked about a lot. There's in talking with family and friends, I think there will always be people who feel that they don't need like, I don't have any money, so I don't need a budget, or,
Right.
and I think it doesn't matter what the income is, or what your debt, what your debt is. If every single penny of that is not accounted for, then there's no way that you're going to get to that debt free, or even close to having a good debt to income ratio, right?
Right.
So I think if it's, you're budgeting $1,000. I mean, I even have a little spreadsheet to break down my fund money every month,
Okay, right.
which is not a lot of money, but it's like I just break it down because I want to see exactly how much I want to spend in each category. So I think the key is, it doesn't matter how small the bucket of money is or how large it is. If every penny of it is not allocated to something, then that's when you're not in control of it.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I would just say that it doesn't matter. I mean, the budget has to be there no matter,
Exactly.
the size of the pot.
Exactly. Well, that's a very, very good final thought for sure for us all to take into consideration. Um, so thank you so much, Collins Foster, for your time and sharing your story. And
For having me.
if you want to learn more about my endeavors that Colin was talking about, my blogs and my videos, you can just go to my website, which is yourmarginmatters.com. And if you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would appreciate that too. Like my videos, very much appreciated. And until next time, this is Jason Brown saying to remember, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. And we will see you next time.